And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wangs at the sports desk across the glass.
John, LAUSD gets back in session next week, so Alberto Carvalho, the superintendent, is doing the rounds on all the local stations. He talked to KCAL about his successes with getting recognized by the White House for LAUSD's efforts in fighting cyber attacks.
So we were recognized, quite frankly, as the leading district, and we had an opportunity to share our story with the nation. And we look forward, quite frankly, to the big announcement made at the White House, $200 million.
That is two, quite frankly's, in 10 seconds.
And if he's good at keeping the cyber attackers away, maybe his next job will be to run Sony.
So we were recognized, quite frankly, as the
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the show. She's one of my favorite people who covers California politics. You can follow her on Twitter at C. Marinucci. Carla Marinucci, welcome.
Hey, John, good to be with you.
It's been too long, and we have so much to talk about, but I'm going to start with this because I don't want to forget about it. You got to tell your husband, Roland, that I'm going to email him later on because I read a book recently about John and Jesse Fremont that is a great prologue to his book about Leland Stanford, and I wished I would have read them in the opposite direction because I read Roland's first and then this one second. Should have been the other way around.
Yeah, both good books. I appreciate the plug. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, let's start with your lunch with Willie Brown, because you just had lunch with the former Ayatollah of the State Assembly and mayor of San Francisco. And I think in one tweet, you dropped a bomb that gave 3 members of the House delegation heart palpitations all at once. Because over the course of your lunch with Willie Brown, he told you that the former governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, is kicking tires on getting in this U.S. Senate race.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it did give heart attacks to 3 Democrats, Adam Schiff, Katie Porter, and Barbara Lee, who are all declared in that 2024 Senate race. But yes, Willie Brown is a good friend of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger just had a birthday party for him at his Brentwood house not long ago. And Willie told me that, look, Arnold has said, he just told Chris Wallace on CNN not long ago that, of course, he'd run for president if he were eligible. He's not, but he is eligible to run for the U.S. Senate. And, look, the guy's in his mid-70s, but he's Schwarzenegger, and he's like the Terminator. He keeps rising from the ashes. Let's talk about what Arnold would do to that race. Willie Brown says he would win it. It would be just like the recall again. He's got name recognition, unlike almost anybody else in California. He's got the money. And right now, he's in a resurgence again in his career. He's number 1 on Netflix with FUBAR. He's got a popular podcast. He's on social media. He is hot. And he's got this positive message. He talks about being, the positive corner of the Internet. Look, he's been outspoken on a lot of things, including bipartisanship, including sort of getting the Republican Party back into an electable position, especially in California. He's one of those sort of positive Reagan-esque, sunny Republicans. And I think that at this point, look, the only real problem he'd have is if he runs as a Republican, if he decides to do this, having that R after his name in an overwhelmingly Democratic state like California would be a problem because there's a lot of Democrats and indies who wouldn't vote for him because they don't want to flip the Senate. They don't want the Republicans to have control of the Senate, and that would certainly help them maintain that. So right now, Arnold has been mum on this, but the fact that when I did ask Willie Brown if he had talked to Arnold directly about whether or not he would run, he just smiled. He wouldn't answer the question, which tells me there may be some game here. Let's keep an eye on this one, John.
Well, and you go back and you look at the race that launched Arnold's political career, the recall election of 2003. The Democrats were all fighting with one another at that time because they were in conflict with each other as to what to do with question number 2 on the ballot. There were many Democrats like Gary South who believed that Democrats should have just boycotted question 2 and focused all of their efforts on question 1. Cruz Bustamante, then lieutenant governor, said, no. We need to play in question number 2. He put his name on the ballot. He had many politicians get behind him in his efforts, including Loretta Sanchez. She was one of his chief surrogates on the cable news circuit. And the Democrats just weren't on the same page. And because of that, Arnold was able to exploit it and was able to put the question 1 and himself over the finish line in question 2. This time around, within that Democratic battle that's going on for U.S. Senate, there aren't a lot of policy disagreements between the candidates. They all have very similar voting records. They all have similar ideologies. So the fighting that's going to happen, and I believe if Arnold jumps in, the fighting is going to intensify because no longer will 2 Democrats make the November ballot. Only one will. So you better throw everything in the kitchen sink at your opponents now. Otherwise, you're not going to live to fight another day. But if you fight over personal issues or you fight over demographic issues, those leave hurt feelings in ways that fighting over what the tax rate should be don't. And if they end up with a lot of hurt feelings and a viable Republican on the ballot, that's the worst case scenario for the Democrats in keeping that seat.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the infighting has already kind of started on the Democratic side. And, of course, Adam Schiff has raised a ton of money, about 10 times more than Katie Porter has or Barbara Lee. And it is going to get very rough. And I think this is where it could be interesting if Arnold indeed wants to get into this race. I mean, from the start, when you're talking about a top 2 primary, I think Arnold would come out in the top 2. Whether he ran as a independent or as a Republican, I think we have to say there are a lot of folks out there, including Gary South, who say this had never happened. That Arnold, as governor, remember, left office with less than stellar poll ratings. But the fact is, a lot of water has gone under the bridge since he left. He is in a resurgence in terms of public opinion right now and his public persona. And the fact is, his message has been one of let's all work together. Let's get things done. It could be that people are tired of the infighting, the partisanship, the nasty, caustic politics. And Arnold is anything but that. I mean, Arnold is all about sort of let's work together. Has he had issues and personal problems in his past? Yes, we know that. But I think there's probably no public figure who's been able to get beyond that stuff better than Schwarzenegger. He's been nothing short of sort of miraculous his whole career in terms of remaking himself and reemerging time and time again. I think that's why this was such a talker in a way, because should he decide to do it, he could be so formidable. But we have to say, Arnold is a really big personality and a big ego, and whether a Schwarzenegger wants to be one of 100 in the U.S. Senate, which is kind of a snake pit in itself, that would be that's the question, John. Don't you think so? I mean, he has always been somebody who's been the lead player, the marquee name, and being one of 100 may not be his thing.
But here's the thing. I don't think he looks at it as being one of 100. I think he looks at it as being the Republican Joe Manchin, because Joe Manchin essentially has veto power, him and Kristen Sinema, over any legislation that comes out of the U.S. Senate. He is a senator that has more power than committee chairs or people in leadership, and he understands that role that he plays. And the Republicans, if you look at the map, I would assume, are going to be the favorites to be in control of the Senate next time around. If the Republicans have narrow control of the Senate and they have, let's say, 51 seats or 52 seats, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is one of them, that puts him in the catbird seat.
You've got a good point there, but I think that also goes to the question of why any run for Arnold as a Republican in California would be a huge hurdle. The fact is, when you talk about issues like reproductive rights and abortion, which we just saw the election in Ohio and how that came out, gun safety issues, Californians are pretty strong on those issues, and having an R after your name running for office here is a real hurdle. So that's where I think people would watch and see, would Arnold run as an independent possibly? I think that is sort of unlikely, given the fact that he has given many speeches talking about his loyalty to the Republican Party. But he's also been very critical of Trump, and he's also been very critical of gerrymandering and the partisan nature of the Republican Party right now. So who knows how he'd go on this? I think it's just so interesting that it's even being talked about at this level. It shows a hunger for some kind of, maybe another kind of candidate or whatever. But I think voters are out there looking for solutions and looking for change. And at this point, Arnold can almost portray himself as an outsider, even though he was governor of California. So for so many reasons, this could be his greatest role yet, we'll see.
Well, I'd add one more point to the electability argument, and that's this. Arnold Schwarzenegger has universal name ID in the state of California.
Yeah. The world, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. And we think because these members of the House delegation have been around, at least two of them, for a very long time. They've been in leadership roles in various capacities in the House. They go on the cable news circuit on MSNBC and CNN. We assume that people know who they are. But if you think about it, the state of California is so big that congressional seats represent less space than a state Senate seat and less than 2% of the total statewide population. Most of the members of the House delegation in California are largely unknown outside their district, and I would argue that many of them are almost largely unknown inside their district. I don't think most people know who any of these three are. If you go into an Uber and you say, who's Barbara Lee? The Uber driver is going to say, I don't know. Did she have a sitcom in the 70s? But with Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how he, went from, being the 7-time Mr. Olympia to governor of California essentially within 90 days back in 2003. And that's why, Willie Brown's sort of toss-off comment could be something to watch. If he decides to make a move here, this is going to be like the recall all over again, and no question.
Totally. All right, let's shift gears and talk about violence and crime in the city of Oakland. Because it seems like every time I see a crime story out of Oakland, you think it's from The Onion. You see a story and you go, no, there's no way this can be true. Where recently a basketball court was blown up. And I said to myself, a basketball court, that's just like concrete and two hoops. If you blow up a basketball court, that's not from fireworks, that's a bomb. And it's just one after another every single day of some inexplicable story of complete random violence going on in Oakland. And then you hear the public officials up there and they downplay it. They think it's the media sensationalizing crime or it's our emotions and we can't read statistics the way that we should. And if you read the statistics, crime is not actually going up, crime is going down. But you talk to people who live there and everyone says they have to deal with it on a regular basis.
And John, I'm telling you, as somebody who has lived here in Oakland for 35 years, I can tell you that this is the number one topic in the city. And look, this is one of the most liberal bastions in the country, between San Francisco and Oakland. And here in Oakland, the NAACP has declared an emergency, saying that this is about failed leadership and the movement to defund the police. And people are saying here, enough is enough. I can tell you in my own case, my youngest son was held up at gunpoint coming into the garage of our house. Last week, my next door neighbor was held up on a Sunday afternoon at noon, gardening in front of her house. She told the two armed robbers, two teenagers holding AR-15s, to go blank themselves, and they drove away. I mean, that is how frustrated I think we're hearing every day. Auto break-ins. carjacking, home invasion robberies. The crime rates here, violent crime rate is up 15% over last year. Property crime up almost 30%. And the response times by the cops are down by half because Oakland has just 700 cops in a city that needs 1,000. There hasn't been a police chief here since February, 6 months. And I mean, it is now at the point where I got to say, Democrats, this is a strongly Democratic city, and Democrats have had bragging points on, the economy, jobs, and battling inflation and so forth. But this is an issue, and Democrats are telling me this, that could really be a problem for them. And Gavin Newsom is, number one on that list. You have to answer for this. When you talk about the crime issue, this is a kitchen table issue. When you're talking about assaults, particularly on older women and Asians here, we are afraid to go out of our house. One of my neighbors described it as domestic terrorism. Roland, who owns a Tacoma truck, came out and found it had been drilled into. The thieves had stolen the gas by drilling into the gas tank.
Oh, my God.
That's apparently a trend up here. I mean, this is what we're talking about. The crime is so bad that neighborhoods are talking about buying license plate readers. The cops cannot respond to the crime. It is at a tipping point here where at this point the frustration is big. And you're watching, by the way, the district attorney here of Alameda County already subject to a recall movement because the feeling is she has dropped prosecution on special circumstances and many high-profile cases. The feeling is she has been her move for criminal justice reform, quote unquote, has gone too far the other direction, and already facing a recall just months into her tenure. So at this point, this is a story that is becoming a national story. Every day you're seeing those videos of carjacking, sideshows, other things in Oakland, and Bay Area, just shootings on the freeways here. There's been 30 in the first 4 months of this year alone. 2 children have already been killed, and a third one has been left on a respirator for life, an 8-year-old who doesn't live very far from me. Just random shootings on the freeway. At this point, I think Democratic officials here are really starting to sweat it because they've got to answer the concerns of people. Hundreds of them turned out in a meeting to put the DA on the hot seat a couple of weeks ago. And the mayor, Shane Cowell, is getting increasing pressure to hire a police chief at least and hire more police. So this issue of defunding the police is coming back to bite in one of the most liberal cities of the country.
I keep reading that your 911 system keeps going down, that there are hours, if not days, where if you call 911, there's no one who is there to answer the phone because the phone system went down. How, in the same state that has Silicon Valley, can we not have a call center that works?
There's that, and here in Oakland, I've had my own experience of trying to call the non-emergency number to report disturbances or potential suspects in robberies, etc., and they don't even answer the phone. The police have told me here they don't have the staffing anymore. They don't have community liaisons anymore. And when you're talking about this kind of situation, it is affecting people's quality of life in a very big way. We haven't even addressed the homeless issue here in Oakland, where Oakland has now been, studies show, has the highest ratio of homelessness anywhere in the state, even higher than Los Angeles. And it's become so prevalent and so visible in some very big encampments that people have just had it and want some kind of answers and want them now.
Last question before you go. We've heard from Allstate. We've heard from State Farm, 2 big insurance giants who are no longer selling policies to new homeowners in the state of California. If you have your policy with them, you're grandfathered in and you could keep it, but you can't buy a new one from one of them. Other companies are no longer selling insurance to commercial entities, they say, because crime is too high, fire threats, those sorts of things. We're also hearing stories, and KGO Television in San Francisco was the station that broke this story, that the insurance companies are using surreptitious means to drop homeowners from their policies. They're flying drones over neighborhoods. They're saying, you have too much junk in your backyard. You're a fire threat. We're dropping you. Or your roof doesn't look very good. We have pictures of it from the sky. We're dropping you. They're coming up with all of these BS excuses to get rid of policies that they deem to be too risky for them. We have called the insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara, trying to get him on the show so we can figure out what's going on. What are we doing to make sure that people can buy insurance? Because if we don't stop the bleeding, we're all going to have to buy it through the state of California, and that's not going to end well. He's not doing media down here. He's not doing this show. He's not doing any of the local television stations, the other radio stations. I don't know if you've been able to get a one-on-one with him anytime soon, but he's essentially MIA, and he put out a statement saying essentially there's nothing he can do about any of this. What do you make of what's going on there and him hiding out? Because usually politicians, when their subject, their issue is in the limelight, they can't wait to go on television and the radio and talk about it, but he's hiding out from us.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think a lot of people would describe this as a make-or-break moment for the insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara. You have Harvey Rosenfeld, who's the founder of Consumer Watchdog. He's the guy who wrote California's landmark insurance law, Prop 103, has come out and said, look, the state needs courage right now. They need somebody to handle these insurance issues for California. Other consumer advocates say that Ricardo Lara has been silent when these large insurance companies canceled, and he hasn't had a whole lot to say about some of these issues, another huge kitchen table issue. So at this point, you do have some legislators expressing concern, but when you compare, and I've covered other insurance commissioners in California, John Garamendi, for instance, and Steve Poizner, they were very, very active in that role. They were very out there. They were very available to the media. There is a real contrast with Ricardo Lara, and he is taking heat for that. So we're going to see how this plays out. But this is another issue, John, when people are looking at their checkbook and the safety of their homes and their cars and their lives, you got to have accountability, and that's where Ricardo Lara is getting a lot of heat right now.
Carla Marinucci, you're the best. Thank you so much for stopping by on this
here,
Friday.
John.
Stay safe in your garage.
Okay, yeah, will do. Thanks.
All right. You can follow Carla on Twitter at @CMarinucci. Carla Marinucci, everyone. If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And if the next time one of your friends tells you that crime isn't really going up in California, that's just the news trying to scare you to death for ratings because it's sweeps week, and you say, no, I heard this woman who's a reporter on the radio who lives in Oakland, and her son got robbed at gunpoint in her garage. Her neighbor got robbed at gunpoint right next door. Her husband had thieves drill a hole in his gas tank to steal the gas. Listen to this. There's proof that crime is actually bad right now in California. Randy, it's easy to send a link to that podcast to that friend or family member.
That's right. At about 2 o'clock, I'll have posted the Carla Marinucci interview that you just heard, where she described all of that insanity in Oakland. You can get it at kbc.com. Click on podcasts. Go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. Download all the episodes. Search for The John Phillips Show on YouTube. There are a ton of different ways to listen, but download and share and let all your friends know about the
rising crime in California.
Well, yesterday we told you that those two 7-Eleven cashiers up in Stockton, according to the mayor of Stockton, would not be charged with a crime for defending themselves against a robber who was trying to steal cigarettes and told them he had a gun.
So mayor is not dummy.
If the cashier is dummy.
No. They, of course, defended themselves with a stick and beat the living hell out of this SOB.
Well, mostly his legs.
And he had every blow coming. But it doesn't matter what the mayor says, because the mayor is not the police chief. The mayor is not the district attorney. The mayor does not have any say at all as to who gets charged with the crime and who doesn't. The district attorney ultimately is the one who is in charge of deciding whether or not charges will be pressed. Well, today, the district attorney in San Joaquin County has officially weighed in. According to San Joaquin County District Attorney Ron Freitas, he said in a statement, quote, "The Stockton 7-Eleven store clerks are not and have never been suspects of the San Joaquin County District Attorney's Office. Any investigation going forward is to hold accountable the individual who threatened and attempted to rob them," end quote.
So DA is not dummy either.
If the cashier is dummy,
DA is not dummy, mayor is not dummy, and certainly the cashiers aren't dummy.
if the cashier is dummy,
But right now it's time to open up the KABC Crime Blotter.
if the cashier is dummy,
Questions?
And Randy, today's edition involves the lottery.
That's right. A 66-year-old woman got scammed by a 76-year-old woman over a phony lotto ticket. For more, here is KPMPH in Fresno.
Speaking of Mega Millions, Fox 26 News reporter Myra Franco explains how a lotto ticket played a role in a scam for one Madera woman who says she never saw it coming.
A 66-year-old woman says she was scammed out of $5,000. She now hopes this serves as a warning to not let your guard down.
All right, how did she lose 5 Gs?
I honestly have no clue where this one is going.
And no, she did not buy 5,000 Quick Picks at a 7-Eleven.
I just want to let everybody know, all people from here from Madera, to be careful because I got scammed.
Agapita Rocha says she was approached by a woman in her 70s after she was leaving Rancho San Miguel last Thursday. She says a scammer claimed to be here illegally from a foreign country and told Rocha they couldn't claim a winning lotto ticket they had on hand because of their resident status.
Okay. This is a scam that happens all the time, but usually you know what they do.
What's that?
They say that they have judgments against them for spousal support or child support, and if they are the ones that declare themselves to be the winner, all of the money would be taken by the courts and given to the children or the ex. So if you pay someone and they're the ones that declare themselves as the winner of the ticket, then they take a portion of the ticket and you can take the rest of the money. Sometimes that's legit, though. It's illegal, I believe, but sometimes they legitimately have a winning ticket.
It's very unlikely, though.
Well, there's a lot of people who owe their kids a bunch of money that don't want to pay it.
Ingrates.
She didn't know the area, that she needed help finding some lawyers. And
How hard is it to say no thank you and walk away?
Yes. No is the same in Spanish as it is in English.
And so, she's telling me all this, and then all of a sudden a man kind of walks by us, and then she starts flagging him down, kind of like
Oh, it's a 2-person scam. Here we go.
Uh-oh.
like asking him, hey, can you help us?
She says he did.
And I said to them, I said, well, if he's going to help you, then, let him help you because I have to go.
She says the scammer found ways to lure her to stay and help her. At that moment, as she was trying to leave, the man stated he was calling the lottery number to...
I'm going to guess this woman had nothing better to do.
She's 76 years old. Imagine being a 76-year-old criminal where you're scamming complete strangers in lottery fraud.
And successful at it.
At that moment, as she was trying to leave, the man stated he was calling the lottery number to confirm they were winning numbers.
So he goes, well, we didn't win the big one, but we won 5 numbers. So, he got all happy, and she got all happy, and then, she's tapping me. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you 100,000, she said.
These people are putting on a show.
Oh, I bet you it's not the first time they've done it.
100,000 for you and 100,000 for him.
She says she didn't find out until later the man that was flagged down was a part of the whole scam, too.
You're right.
Rocha says they asked her for $5,000 in regards to paying the lawyer something about taxes and being able to claim the winning lotto ticket.
Wait, so she didn't even know what the $5,000 she gave to these scammers was for?
No.
Maybe for a lawyer?
Rocha says they asked her for $5,000 in regards to paying the lawyer something about taxes and being able to claim the winning lotto ticket. The man was supposedly making calls to get money out, too. They went together to the bank. She went in.
Oh, yeah, so this guy's also playing along. Yeah, I'm on the phone with my bank right now. Why don't you just go into that bank right there and take out a $5,000 cashier's check? That would be fantastic.
Yeah, here's the thing. Whether it's an email scam or this, Nigerian princes don't need your money, and neither do lottery winners.
The man was supposedly making calls to get money out, too. They went together to the bank. She went in and took it out for them. They took off with it, and Agapita called 911 after realizing she was scammed.
How quickly after they took off did she realize that she got scammed here?
However long it took, it's too long.
An unbelievable story, the Madera Police Department says many good elderly Samaritans fall for. The Madera Police Department...
Yeah, but she got scammed by someone 10 years older than her.
Yeah, it's not like she had 10 years. She had 10 years of youth on this criminal. And she still got outsmarted.
The Madera Police Department says majority of the scams in Madera are targeted against the elderly population.
And apparently, much like how the homeless commit crimes against the homeless, old people are committing crimes against old people.
Can you imagine what kind of scam she's got on bingo night? You see, these troll dolls I have here for luck. One of them's collectible. Give me $5,000 and you can have it. It's worth $100, but I like you. I like something about your face.